I am professor of Universidad Andina in Bolivar, and I have been the main technical advisor of the Yasuni ITT initiative from 2007 to 2011.
Please, Carlos, could you tell us the context first, geographically and historically, of the Yasuni initiative?
Okay, I will like to begin talking about the context of Ecuador. Ecuador has three very important particular traits. First, is one of the 13 most biodiverse countries in the planet, according with the UN. It has the largest amount of vertebrates for square kilometer on Earth. In addition to that, Ecuador has incredibly diverse cultural endowment. In our country, which is one of the smallest in South America, 13 different languages are spoken, and that is mostly the case of the Amazon region. Secondly, Ecuador has been an oil exporter since 1972. So, oil production is coming from the Amazon region, producing the most important, the most extensive environmental damage on the planet. According with an article recently published by the New York Times, the environmental effects of oil extraction in Ecuador are worse than those of the oil spill in Mexico. I have documented it. I can present the article from the New York Times. Taking that into account, it will be very important also to talk a little bit about the Yasuni National Park. The park has been regarded, according with the scientific evidence, as one of the most biodiverse hotspots in the Western Hemisphere. No other place in the Earth has had more registered and documented species of mammals, birds, amphibians, and vascular plants. So, from this perspective, in addition to that, Yasuni, the national park, is one of the two still surviving isolated indigenous communities in Ecuador. So it has a unique cultural and environmental diversity, and it is a place which deserves to be protected. Nevertheless, the Yasuni Park holds the largest unexploited oil reserve in Ecuador, with about 1 billion oil barrels. That's why the Ecuadorian government decided in 2007 to present to the United Nations the Yasuni ITT initiative, which has essentially two parts. On the one hand, Ecuador committed in 2007 itself to the United Nations to keep indefinitely unexploited the Yasuni ITT reserve in order to avoid carbon dioxide emissions, to protect biodiversity and protect the rights of indigenous people for keeping their cultures. On the other hand, the idea was that the international community will contribute to a fund that will be spent under UN supervision only on renewable energy, avoided deforestation, and sustainable social development. The Yasuni initiative was dropped by President Larrea in 2013. Nevertheless, taking into account the current scientific evidence, we think that the idea of keeping fossil fuels on the ground is not only a very important solution to avoid the risk of ecocide in the Yasuni National Park, which is very high, because the government is willing to begin extracting the oil. The government already built a road going inside the Yasuni National Park. This has been documented with satellite photographies by the University of Padua, and another media very important, prestigious, such as National Geographic, roads can provide a very, very dangerous effect on the preservation of biodiversity. So there is some damage that has been already done, and taking into account the precautionary principle recognized by the amendments presented for the Ecocide in Article 7, I think it is very important not only to present the case of Yasuni as a case of risk of ecocide, but also I am asking the Tribunal to foster the idea of keeping the oil in the ground as applied to this specific situation as the only alternative in which we are going to have an effective protection of the most important risk of the park, which is oil. I am going just a little bit to talk also about the case of oil in Ecuador. Ecuador became an oil exporter since 1972, and ever since, most of the deforestation and destruction of biodiversity in this part of the Amazonian region, which is actually the most diverse in the whole Amazonian basin, we have a very serious impact. We have very serious impact. We can document it here. This is the whole Amazonian region. This is the Ecuadorian part, which is very small, but we have here the Andean mountains. So this part has the more stable climate and has a lot of rain. That is why biodiversity is very high. Here we have some features about the Yasuni National Park. The idea is that only in this area, the whole Amazonian region, we have the largest concentration of mammals, birds, amphibian, and vascular plants. Here we have the extent of deforestation in the northern Amazonian region, according with satellite information. This damage is first unreversible. That means that this land, which is plotted in red, is actually, in most of the case, completely useless. Living conditions in the Amazon are the worst in Ecuador. We have documented it, and with the census information from 1990, they didn't improve during that time. About half of the population in the Amazonian region is indigenous, and has been, their cultures have been destroyed or jeopardized seriously by oil extraction and the expansion of roads and the migration coming from the rest of the country. So that is why I think the effect of oil on the Amazonian region has been extremely dangerous. Well, in the Amazon we have 8 different nationalities with 8 different indigenous spoken languages.
Do you have
in the case of Yasuni,
isolated indigenous population?
In the national park, in the Yasuni National Park, which is located here, we have the two latest still remaining isolated indigenous group, the Tagaeri and Taromenani, belonging to the Waorani nationality.
Are they in danger of extinction?
Absolutely. I think, according with some of the most accurate scientific information we have, the number of people in these isolated communities is not larger than 400, and in 2004, 14 of them were killed. So the impact of oil might be devastating for them. And the only way to preserve the integrity and even the physical survival as a culture will be to keep oil in the ground, in addition to try to avoid other environmental effects produced by illegal logging, illegal counting in the Yasuni National Park.
Carlos, why do you consider that if the oil exploitation keep going in Yasuni could be a crime of ecocide? Could you consider the elements? Is there any risk to the part of the system of global commons or an ecosystem service reliant upon by any human population? Both of them, one of them?
I think first, yeah, if we regard biodiversity and biodiversity's benefits as an Earth endowment, as a humankind endowment, we cannot think that biodiversity belongs only to one specific country. In terms of biodiversity, the Yasuni National Park has a unique and iconic value because it is the most diverse hotspot in the planet, or might be. Yeah? From this perspective, I think the preservation of the Yasuni National Park and avoiding risk to this biodiversity is extremely important. In addition to that, most of the rivers that cross this region go to the Amazon. So pollution in these rivers will have a transnational component because it will affect Peru and Brazil as well. So if we regard the Amazon rainforest as a common good for humankind as a whole, protecting the Amazon rainforest, the largest remaining rainforest in the planet, is a priority. That is why we think the risk of ecocide is high in this particular case.
Okay, do you have some witnesses or expertise?
Yes, I would like to call first to Esperanza Martinez to talk about the Yasuni case and the ways in which we can prevent this damage.